My name is Grace Whitmore, 36 years old. For once, everything seemed perfect. The restaurant's soft amber lights wrapped the room in warmth, glinting off polished silverware and wine glasses. A low hum of piano drifted through the speakers, subtle enough to let conversations breathe. The table was long, neatly set with folded napkins and flickering votives. For a fragile moment, I allowed myself to believe this birthday dinner might actually feel like mine. My father even offered me a side hug, his cologne sharp and familiar, as though he hadn't spent the last few years reminding me I was a disappointment whenever rent checks or career updates didn't meet his quiet, impossible standards. Heather brought flowers, cheap carnations from a grocery store, but still. Aunt Lynn arrived only 5 minutes late, which for her felt like punctuality. I smoothed my dress, trying to match my outer calm with the hopeful rhythm beating in my chest. For the first 20 minutes, I almost believed the script had changed. We chatted about weather, about a local street fair, about nothing that could cut me open. I let myself imagine a night where my family simply sat, ate, and let me exist without being a target. But cruelty rarely announces itself. It seeps in like a leak, small and steady before the pipe bursts. Lynn struck first. She peered at the menu, then at me, and said, "I'm honestly surprised you can afford this place." The smile never touched her eyes. My dad chuckled softly like it was a clever observation instead of a barb. Heather tilted her head, syrupy voice dripping as she asked, "Still working that little computer thing job?" She didn't mention the toned $200 I wired to her every month. She never did. Why say aloud what everyone pretended wasn't happening? My mother chimed in with her specialty, mocking disguised as compliment. "It's so good to see you finally looking put together. Did you lose weight or did you just buy better shapewear?" She smirked at her wine glass like it was in on the joke. I kept my smile fixed, though inside I felt the old sting, the humiliation they always made me swallow so they could laugh together. I lifted my water glass in a toast, thanked them for coming, and swallowed my anger like a bitter pill. Then the waiter arrived for orders. Mason, my 12-year-old nephew, leaned back in his chair, scanned the menu like he was picking a crown jewel, and ordered a $30 steak. No glance to his mother for permission. No hesitation. Heather didn't flinch. Eric smirked, pride flickering in his grin. I didn't say anything either. It was my birthday. I wasn't going to quibble with a child over a menu. I added the number to the growing ledger in my head. But Mason wasn't done. Every time I spoke, he muttered under his breath, repeating my words in a mocking falsetto. Each repetition earned snickers from the table. Eric told him once to cut it out, but the grin stayed wide across his face. This was entertainment, not discipline. I excused myself to the restroom, gripping the edges of the porcelain sink until my knuckles whitened. I stared at my reflection, whispering, "Just get through tonight." For 1 second, I thought about leaving then, walking away before they could carve me open further. But hope is a cruel tether. I went back. When I returned, the laughter died abruptly, like children caught misbehaving. Lynn dabbed at her eyes, cheeks flushed from amusement. I sat down anyway, my chest heavy with dread. Dessert came next. Not a cake, not candles brought by anyone at this table, but a solitary slice of cheesecake I had pre-ordered myself when I booked the reservation. A single candle flickered weakly, as though embarrassed to stand in for celebration. The waiter sang softly, and the others joined, off-key, half-hearted, dragging the notes like weights. The moment the song ended, Mason pointed at my shoes. "Dad says those are fake, like you." The words hung in the air for a second too long. Then, as if rehearsed, he tipped his soda, ice, syrup, and fizz cascading over the leather, soaking into my skin. The table erupted, laughter sharp and ugly, like glass breaking. Heather leaned back, smiling proudly as though Mason had delivered a performance worth applause. Eric slapped the table, tears in his eyes from the force of his laughter. Even my mother chuckled, muttering, "Kids say the darndest things." Heat surged into my face, not just from the soda seeping into my shoes, but from the sudden clarity. They weren't laughing at a child's joke. They were laughing at me. Together, united in their cruelty. I didn't speak. I didn't give them the satisfaction of my voice. I rose, grabbed my purse, and walked out. Their laughter followed, echoing down the restaurant corridor like the soundtrack of every humiliation they'd ever dealt me. Only one person came after me. Grandma. She didn't say a word as we walked down the sidewalk, city lights bleeding into puddles at our feet. She carried herself with the same quiet dignity she always had, the scent of roses clinging to her cardigan. We found a bench beneath a flickering street lamp. I blinked hard, trying to dam the sting in my eyes, while she sat beside me, hands folded neatly in her lap. Finally, she spoke. "You've let them take from you too long. It's time they learn." Her voice wasn't cruel, not judgmental. It was matter of fact, like truth distilled. I looked at her, searching for any hint of softness. Instead, I saw resolve, a glimmer of steel. "And I'll help you," she added. That was all. No long speech, no dramatics, just a vow spoken with the kind of weight you didn't doubt. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. Something in me shifted, a small hinge opening after years of being shut. When I got home that night, I kicked off my soaked shoes, peeled off my dress, and sat in the dim glow of my living room. My laptop glowed back at me. For 15 months, I had been sending Heather $2,200 every month. At first for rent, then utilities, then groceries. Each request wrapped in panic until it became routine, unquestioned, expected. That night, with one click, I canceled the transfer. No message, no warning, just silence. I shut the laptop, heart pounding not from fear, but from something sharper, liberation. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, at 7:12 a.m., the first text came. No greeting, no apology, just, "Did the bank mess up, or did you cancel the transfer?" By 8:30, 6 missed calls from Heather, 1 from Eric. No voicemails. Cowards never leave trails. By 10 o'clock, the family group chat erupted. Heather: "Grace, you seriously canceled the transfer after everything we've done for you?" Mom: "Can we talk about this like adults? This feels extreme." Eric: "We have a lease. That money covers real bills." Heather again: "You're going to punish Mason because you got your feelings hurt over a joke? He's a kid." A joke. That's what they called it. A child deliberately humiliating me at my own birthday dinner, and somehow I was the one who needed to lighten up. I stared at the screen, my coffee cooling in my hands, and said nothing. Because sometimes silence is the loudest weapon you can wield. Grandma called me that afternoon. I answered before the second ring. She didn't ask if I was okay. She already knew. "I'm coming over," she said. "Clear your table." When she arrived, she didn't come empty-handed. She carried an old manila envelope tucked under her arm, the corners soft from years of storage. She moved straight to the kitchen, set it down, and pulled out the contents. Documents, receipts, statements. The pages fanned out like a deck of cards, each one carrying weight heavier than paper should. "These," she said, tapping the stack, "are what I've been covering for your sister." Heather's name appeared again and again. Utility bills, late notices, bank slips marked paid. Grandma's neat handwriting trailed across the margins, the same script she used for grocery lists and birthday cards. "She never told you because she knew I'd keep quiet," Grandma continued, "but after last night, I won't." I swallowed, shame and fury battling in my chest. "You were paying her bills?" "And yours," she said gently. "Through you. That transfer you've been sending? I made sure it stretched far enough to keep their lights on when you couldn't." She didn't sound proud. She sounded tired. I leaned back, arms crossed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have argued, and I would have let you. Sometimes silence keeps peace. But peace has become a prison, Grace. Last night showed me that." Her voice sharpened. "So here's what we'll do. No more transfers. No more secret subsidies. I'll cut them off. You'll stand firm. And we'll see who they are without your back to lean on." She drafted a message right there at my table, hands steady on the phone. The words were short, precise. "I've decided to step away from financially supporting anyone in this family who thinks mocking and humiliating Grace is acceptable behavior. If you think you've done nothing wrong, you won't notice the difference. If you have, this will be your chance to reflect." She pressed send, then, without a pause, left the family chat. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed like a hive. "Heather, so you turned Grandma against us now? What are you trying to do, bankrupt us? Mason was just being a kid." Eric: "This is extreme. You're punishing a whole family over a child's joke." Mom: "Grace, you've made your point. Don't drag your grandmother into this. It looks manipulative." I didn't answer, but Grandma did. She picked up the phone, dialed Heather directly, and put it on speaker. "Heather," she said, calm and clear, "if you ever want to speak to me again, you'll start by having your son apologize in person. Properly, not forced, not scripted, real. Otherwise, this line is dead." Then she hung up. That night, Mason called. His voice was sweet in the way sugar is when it's artificial. Aunt Grace, he began, reading something Heather had clearly written. I'm sorry for embarrassing you. It was just a joke. I'll never do it again. Why did you say it? I asked, cutting through the performance. Silence stretched on the line. Then his voice dropped low. Because Dad said you only wear knockoffs and pretend to be successful. He was 12 and already fluent in cruelty, taught at the dinner table. Thank you for being honest, I said softly. Then I hung up. I sat there in the quiet, my phone screen glowing like an accusation. It wasn't just Mason, it was Heather, it was Eric. It was all of them, feeding him the script until he believed it was his own. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply knew, with a clarity sharper than glass, that they would never see me as anything but a wallet to raid and a target to mock. The following morning, Grandma invited me over again. Her house smelled faintly of roses and lemon cleaner. On the kitchen table, she had spread the documents from before, but this time they were joined by something heavier. A thick folder with tabs and highlighted lines. What's that? I asked. She smiled, small and grim. The house Heather and Eric live in. They think it's theirs. It isn't. She opened the folder, revealing deeds, trust papers, tax receipts. Your grandfather put it under a family trust. I'm the trustee. I've been quietly paying the property taxes and maintenance costs for years. And I'm done. Her eyes locked with mine, calm and unblinking. They have 30 days to buy it outright or move. My throat went dry. Grandma, I don't do revenge with fire, she said, almost amused. I do it with silence and precision. I stared at the papers, each one stamped and dated, the ink indelible. It wasn't a threat. It was law. The phone buzzed in my purse. I didn't need to check to know it was Heather. My fingers itched to open the message, but I didn't. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one scrambling. Grandma poured tea into delicate china cups, the ones with tiny painted violets. Drink, she said. You'll need strength. They're going to scream louder before they go quiet. The steam curled between us, carrying the scent of bergamot and inevitability. Outside, the roses swayed in the breeze. Inside, war was already underway. The news landed like a grenade in the group chat. The trust was dissolved. Heather and Eric had 30 days to either buy the house outright or get out. At first, the silence was louder than any explosion. Then the messages began trickling in, one by one, like drops before a storm. Heather, you can't do this. That's our house. Eric, this is theft. We'll take legal action. Mom, Grace, please talk to your grandmother. She doesn't know what she's doing. But Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't just cut off the transfers or revoke her role as a silent benefactor. She came armed with receipts. One evening at her kitchen table, she slid a spreadsheet toward me. Rows and rows of names, dates, amounts. Color-coded boxes detailing every dollar she had, quietly funneled into the family for decades. My mother's emergency dental surgery? Paid. Aunt Lynn's business loan for a boutique that never opened? Paid. Eric's transmission repair 2 winters ago? Paid. Heather's daycare costs when Mason was 5? Paid. This is the ledger of my life, Grandma said, her voice level, eyes sharp. Every time they thought I was harmless, knitting in my chair, I was also keeping track. They'll deny, they'll spin, but I have the receipts, and now, so do you. She mailed formal letters to every family member, not emails, not texts, letters, signed in ink, delivered by certified post with tracking numbers. Each letter ended the same way. I owe none of you anything anymore. The backlash was immediate. My phone buzzed until my hands ached from swiping it away. Heather, you turned her against us. Are you happy now? Mason is suffering because of you. Eric, we'll lose the house. This is extreme grace. You've gone too far. Mom, Grandma says she's doing this for you, but you're letting her. That makes you responsible. You're tearing the family apart. Aunt Lynn, resurfacing after a year of silence. I always said you were selfish. Now everyone sees it. Not apologies, not reflection, just attacks, blame, and the rewriting of a story where they were always the victims, and I the villain. 2 nights later, Heather appeared at my building. She buzzed the intercom until I let her up, her voice vibrating with urgency. When I opened the door, she wore the face she always pulled when things went badly. Performative panic, eyes wide with manufactured innocence. We're already behind on utilities, she said, stepping inside like she owned the place. Mason's acting out. Eric's threatening to leave if things don't improve. You can't just sit back and watch us collapse. I crossed my arms. When was the last time you did something for me that wasn't attached to a dollar sign? She froze, mouth open but empty. The silence hung heavy. Then she snapped, mask slipping. You think this is revenge? It's not. And everyone's going to know who started it. She slammed the door behind her so hard the frame rattled. By morning, cousins I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly opinionated. I heard you're evicting Heather. Is it true you're brainwashing Grandma? You're punishing Mason for being a kid? The smear campaign had begun. My name was the new currency traded across family threads, half-truths woven into lies until the story was unrecognizable. I sat on my bed, scrolling through message after message, the narrative twisting with every passing hour. It should have crushed me, but instead a strange calm settled over me. Let them talk. Because I knew something they didn't. Grandma wasn't finished. A week later, my mother invited me to lunch. No drama, no arguing, just the two of us, she'd said. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The cafe was small, quiet. She ordered a salad she didn't touch, her fork moving lettuce around in circles. She talked about Heather first, about how stressed she was, how Mason was confused, how Eric was trying his best. Then she dropped it like bait. They've contacted a lawyer. They're planning to challenge your grandmother's decision. They're claiming she's being manipulated, that you're controlling her. I laughed. Actually laughed. Grandma's sharper at 83 than either of them combined. But my mother leaned in, her perfume cloying, her voice lowering. They found something in the will, an older version. One where Heather was supposed to inherit the house outright. You weren't even mentioned. The words hit like a stone in the gut. I knew it was a tactic. Stir doubt. Plant fear, weaken resolve. But still, my mind spun. What if? I left her there with her untouched salad and drove straight to Grandma's. She was in her rose garden, pruning with steady hands, as if she'd been waiting for me. When I told her what my mother said, she didn't blink. She set the shears down, wiped her gloves, and motioned for me to follow her inside. In her bedroom, she opened the closet and pulled out a box I'd never seen. She set it on the bed, lifted the lid, and revealed papers, photos, and a single sealed envelope with my name on it. "Open it," she said. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 2 years ago. In it, Grandma explained everything. Why she changed the will. Why she left the older version accessible. Why she waited. I wanted them to show their teeth. I wanted them to dig and prove their entitlement. You've doubted yourself too long, Grace. I've known the truth, but I needed you to see it too. I looked up at her, throat tight. She smiled, not kindly, but with resolve. The new will is notarized, witnessed, filed. They can dig as much as they like. All they'll uncover is themselves. Then she reached into the box again and pulled out something else, a small flash drive. She placed it in my palm. "For when you're ready," she said. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at it. The plastic casing hummed in my hand like a secret waiting to change everything. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen filled with grainy footage, a date stamp from 2 weeks before my birthday dinner. Heather and Eric sat on Grandma's couch, laughing. Mason sprawled on the floor with a tablet. Eric's voice was clear. "Grace is an idiot. Let her keep sending money. She thinks she's being generous. We're the ones living rent-free." Heather laughed. "She's desperate for approval. We'll just keep nodding until Grandma's gone. Then it's ours." Mason looked up, parroting what he'd heard. "She's not even real. Dad says her job is fake and her shoes are knockoffs." Heather corrected him with a smile. "No, baby, she's real, just real dumb." I sat frozen, every nerve alight, watching the proof of what I had suspected for years. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't me being too sensitive. It was deliberate. It was war. And I wasn't imagining any of it. I replayed the video 3 times, each word searing deeper, every laugh, every glance, every sneer. They had all been rehearsing their contempt like lines in a play. For years, I had let them convince me I was paranoid, too sensitive, imagining insults where none existed. But here it was, captured in pixels and sound. Proof. The next morning, Grandma and I sat side by side in a law office that smelled of paper and polish. She wore her pearls and a trench coat, every inch of her posture straight and unyielding. The lawyer listened carefully as we laid everything out. The dissolved trust, the spreadsheets of financial aid, the recording on the flash drive, the threats already arriving by text. He flipped through documents slowly, nodding. "You're not just protected," he said finally. You're ahead of them. If they try anything, they'll regret it. Grandma leaned forward. Then let's go further. She dictated a new clause for her will, her voice crisp. Anyone who challenged her legal decisions would be automatically disqualified from inheriting anything. The lawyer called it a no contest clause. I called it a seatbelt for chaos. Within 48 hours, certified letters went out to every name on her spreadsheet. No texts, no emails, letters requiring signatures, each one enclosing the transcript of Heather and Eric's words from the video. Each one ending with a line that could not be mistaken. All financial support is terminated. Any further attempts to harass, defame, or pressure Grace or myself will be handled through legal means. The fallout came faster than expected. Heather and Eric stormed up Grandma's porch, pounding the door like bailiffs. Their voices rose, shouting accusations. "You're being manipulated. She's turning you against family." But Grandma was ready. A camera above the porch blinked red, recording every word. When she finally opened the door, she didn't yell. She simply said, "You're being recorded." Eric's mouth snapped shut like a trap. Heather sputtered something about just checking in, but Grandma closed the door gently, leaving them shrieking at wood. An hour later, she texted me the footage. "Keep it, just in case." That night, my phone lit up again. "Heather, you're destroying our lives over a petty argument." "Mom, this isn't the way to fix things. You're making it worse." Eric, "You think you've won? You're nothing without that old woman's money." Heather again, "When we go public with everything, don't say we didn't warn you." That last message made my skin prickle. Public. I set the phone down, hands trembling. An hour later, a new text buzzed in from an unknown number. "She's not going to live forever. When she's gone, we'll fix everything. You'll be out." I forwarded it to Grandma. Her reply came in 3 words. "Let them talk." But sleep didn't come easy that night. I kept seeing Mason's face on the video, repeating words fed to him like poison candy. I kept hearing Heather's triumphant laugh, Eric's careless smirk, and beneath it all, the certainty that they weren't finished. They were only regrouping. At midnight, my phone rang again. Mason. His voice was different this time. Gone was the smugness, the rehearsed cruelty. What came through was small, shaky. "Aunt Grace?" he whispered. "Yes? Can I come stay with you?" I sat upright, my breath caught. "Why, Mason? What's going on?" He hesitated, then blurted it out. "They're packing boxes. Dad lost his job. Mom's been screaming all day. They cut off the Wi-Fi, said I was wasting data. At school, kids are calling me fake shoes. Someone posted the video from your birthday. Everyone's seen it." The image of him, 12 years old, walking down hallways with laughter nipping at his heels, made my chest ache. "I didn't mean to mess everything up," he whispered. "I didn't know." I closed my eyes. "You didn't mess it up, Mason. None of this is your fault." He sniffled softly, the sound of a child finally stripped of armor he never should have worn. "I want to come stay with you," he repeated. God, I wanted to say yes, but I also knew the truth. I don't think your mom will let that happen. The silence that followed was longer than any scream. When he finally spoke, his voice was a thread. "Okay." Then the line went dead. I sat in the dark, phone limp in my hand, torn between fury and grief. The war I hadn't asked for had spilled into him now. The boy who poured soda on my shoes wasn't the enemy. He was just the reflection of parents who taught him cruelty as a family language. And now he was drowning in the very water they had drawn. The morning after Mason's call, I found myself staring at the manila envelope Grandma had slipped into my bag weeks earlier. It was marked in her careful cursive, "For when they go public." Heather's threat still echoed. "When we go public with everything, don't say we didn't warn you." And the anonymous text haunted me. "She's not going to live forever. When she's gone, we'll fix everything." I set the envelope on my coffee table. For a long time, I just stared at it, heart pounding, as if opening it would drag me across a line I could never uncross. Then, slowly, I tore the flap open. Inside were 3 things: a notarized letter from Grandma's lawyer, a printed email chain, and a flash drive. I started with the emails. They were between Heather and a man I'd never heard of, apparently some freelance reputation consultant. Heather had contacted him weeks before my birthday. Most of her messages were rants about me, my job, my clothes, my supposed desperation. But one email stopped me cold. It was dated 5 days before the dinner. "We need to humiliate her a little. Nothing crazy. Just something that makes her look ridiculous. If it gets filmed, even better. The soda, the shoes, the laughter. It hadn't been Mason improvising cruelty. It had been planned, orchestrated, scripted. My stomach clenched. Next, I plugged in the flash drive. It contained screenshots, photos, and one short video. Heather at a backyard gathering, plastic cup in hand, laughing with a friend. Her voice was clear over the hum of chatter. "I'm going to break Grace down until she crawls back like she always does," she bragged. "She'll never see it coming." I sat frozen, bile rising. Finally, I unfolded the notarized letter. It was Grandma's statement, signed and witnessed. It detailed months of financial abuse, manipulation, and threats, Heather and Eric's pattern of entitlement, the recording of their insults, the trust dissolution. It was airtight. That afternoon, I received an email from a local journalist. The subject line read, "Family dispute over trust. Request for comment." The message was polite, professional, but the implication was clear. Someone had tipped them off. Someone wanted the story out, and it wasn't me. Heather was trying to drag me into the public eye, to smear me as the greedy villain who turned Grandma against her family. But she didn't know I had this envelope. I called the journalist and arranged to meet. We sat in a quiet cafe, the low hiss of the espresso machine filling the pauses. I slid the envelope across the table. "If you're going to tell this story, tell all of it." 3 days later, the article dropped. It wasn't sensational. It wasn't tabloid trash. It was measured, damning, and undeniable. A piece about financial abuse within families, names omitted, but the details sharp enough that everyone in our circle knew exactly who it was about. The emails, the consultant, the video of the birthday dinner, it painted a picture Heather couldn't rewrite. The fallout was nuclear. Heather tried to spin it. She posted long screeds online about being taken out of context, about how I was twisting things. She called Grandma, leaving voicemails dripping with tears and accusations of betrayal. Grandma blocked her. Eric made one last angry call to the lawyer, threatening to sue. He was told to cease contact or face harassment charges. That ended quickly. Mom tried to play neutral. "Families go through rough patches," she said, her voice tight. "You'll regret cutting ties when this cools down." "This isn't a rough patch," I told her. My voice was steady, colder than I meant it to be. "It's a pattern, and I'm done." She tried to guilt me about Mason. I told her I hoped he'd be okay, but I wasn't sacrificing myself for anyone anymore, not even him. That night, I did something I'd thought about for years. I left the family group chat. Then I blocked Heather, blocked Eric, blocked Aunt Lynn and the cousins who had piled on once the money stopped. One by one, I closed the doors they had always assumed would stay open. When my phone finally went silent, I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 days later, I packed a small weekend bag and drove to the coast. No one knew where I was. No one could reach me. I stood barefoot in the sand at dusk, the waves licking the shore in steady rhythm. For the first time in years, I celebrated quietly, just myself. No fake laughter, no guilt, just the sound of the ocean, swallowing every echo of their voices. Grandma called as the sun dipped into the horizon. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't need to. "Now they know," she said simply. "And now you're free." Her voice carried the weight of truth. I looked down at the shoes I had brought with me. The same pair Mason had soaked in soda, the same pair that had survived the worst night of my life. They weren't just shoes anymore. They were proof. Proof that I had survived too. The ocean air lingered in my hair when I returned home, a salty reminder of quiet freedom. For a few days, silence reigned. No calls, no messages, no buzzing group chat. I let myself breathe, convinced maybe the storm had finally passed. But storms don't pass when people thrive on thunder. A week later, my mother appeared at my door. She didn't call ahead. She just stood on the porch, her purse hanging from her arm, lips pressed tight. "Grace," she said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." I let her in, more out of curiosity than obligation. She sat at my table, smoothing her skirt, pretending this was a civilized meeting and not another ambush. "You can't cut off family forever," she began. "Heather is hurting. Eric is humiliated. Mason is confused. He needs stability. You're making things worse by keeping this war alive." I folded my arms. "I didn't start a war. I stopped funding one." Her eyes narrowed. "You've always liked being the one who's right. But sometimes grace matters more than justice." There it was again, that word, grace, wielded like a demand, not a gift. I shook my head. Grace without accountability isn't grace, it's permission. For the first time she faltered. Her lips parted, then closed. She rose stiffly, gathered her purse, and left without another word. That evening, I sat in the garden with Grandma, the scent of roses and damp earth clinging to the air. She was pruning carefully, each cut deliberate. "You don't need to convince her," she said without looking up. "Some people choose the story that makes them feel safest, even if it's a lie. Let her keep it." I watched her hands, steady and sure, and wondered if strength was something you learned or something you were born with. Weeks passed. Heather went quiet online, but silence from her always felt like plotting, not peace. Eric disappeared into long shifts, or maybe unemployment. No one seemed sure. Mason's name came up only once, through a neighbor who mentioned seeing him walking alone after school, backpack slung low, hoodie pulled up. I thought of his call that night, his small voice asking if he could stay with me. The ache of it hadn't left. But I couldn't save him by reopening doors that had nearly destroyed me. Instead, I made quiet arrangements. I called a school counselor I knew from work. I reached out to a family friend, an older man, kind, patient, who had once been close with Eric's side. He agreed to keep an eye on Mason, to step in where I could not without becoming a target again. It wasn't everything, but it was something. One morning, while cleaning out my hall closet, I stumbled across the shoes. The same pair Heather had mocked. The pair Mason had baptized in soda as everyone laughed. They were still stained faintly along the seams, but intact. Survivors, like me. I set them by the front door, not to wear, not to show, just to remember. That night, I heard the girls in the apartment upstairs laughing, Lily and Sarah sharing videos on their phones, carefree in a way Mason might never get to be. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the sound wash over me. Proof that joy could exist even after wreckage. Later, as I sipped tea at my kitchen table, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. One line. "It isn't over." The screen glowed in the dim light, humming with the weight of unfinished battles. I didn't open it. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down, letting the darkness swallow it. Upstairs, laughter rang out again, warm and unbroken. That was what I chose to keep.